Army, multiple operations, helpful tips, and videos, right? So today we're continuing our CMDP series with part 7, and we're starting our general maintenance management operation checks. So this first video is going to be checks 1 through 15. Just want to start off by saying thank you guys for all your support so far with the CMDP series. I've received several emails asking for materials, asking for questions, just to better your all's maintenance programs. And that's what this is all about. So this is checklist B of the CMDP checklist, which is general maintenance management operations, right? So this series or this topic or this checklist can be broken into 3 parts. There's quite a few checks, but just like the previous videos and publications, we're going to pull up the regulations, talk about them, certain things that I would look for if I was inspecting a unit. And then at the end of the full CMDP series, we will do a live CMDP inspection on one of my units. So if you're new to that channel, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and let's get started. All right. Catch it up here. All right, so general maintenance management operations. Okay, like I said, this is part 1. There's going to be a lot of helpful tips. We're going to go through a lot of the regulations and go through what I would look for. So this is just the checklist of what it looks like. Total of 35 checks. Most of these checks are pretty easy, and a lot of this stuff we'll go into detail, but we will get more into detail as we go through the CMDP process. So first check, an officer or civilian equivalent will be appointed in writing as a maintenance officer, right? So this is AR 750-1, paragraph 3-7. So things to verify during the check that I look for is if the person is on appointment orders, is still in the unit, has the commander actually signed the memo, and is the commander currently in command and has assumption of command orders, right? So this is just an example for you guys out there. If you want a copy of this, let me know. But this is your maintenance officer appointment orders, all right? Pretty self-explanatory on this one. So here you go, 3-7. General policies in 750-1 states an officer or civilian equivalent qualified in maintenance management will be appointed as a maintenance officer in writing, okay? And that's at each level of command. All right, so for me, like we have our companies, and then we also have our battalion maintenance officer, right, which is usually our battalion XL, but that's right out of the regulation there. So check 2 is commanders will establish a command maintenance discipline program, right? So this is covered in DAPM 750-1 table 10-2, and also your unit training calendars is what I look for. So you want to try, or I try, anytime I know I'm inspecting a unit, I always put out the admin order, which we covered in a previous video. But the week prior, I have the unit give me their unit training schedule going 3 months back and 3 months ahead. That way I can look and see what they're doing and so forth, right? So things to verify during this check: what does their CMDP look like? Do they actually have a working CMDP program? And the biggest one that I've noticed recently in the Army is, are the commanders invested in their maintenance program? So like I said, if you have a commander that's invested in his or her maintenance program, things are a lot easier. Also, when was the last inspection? Are the records on hand? Is CMDP on the unit training calendar? And then can a unit provide a copy of the training calendar to verify? So when I do a CMDP inspection, I don't take their word for it. If it's not in writing or they don't have records, I'm sorry, but you got to have records, right? So here's the APM 750-1. This just breaks down pretty much all the CMDP checklists that you are required to check it for. I didn't want to go through all of them in table 10-1. There's a lot of them, but if you do want to reference them, it's the APM 750-1. So here's an example of a DTMS training calendar. All right, so as you can see, you know, they have their services on here, their command maintenance, talking about their focus, all that stuff is right here. So this is one of the things I look for. I look for make sure the services are on the training schedule, any low density training, you know, battery training, environmental training, things that are required to be taught. Make sure you look at that on the training schedule. And then here's a CMDP policy letter that I drafted when I stood up a field feeding company. So I wanted to make maintenance the cornerstone of the field feeding company, since we or well, they were now, serve for units above echelon. So one thing I wanted to do with the commander was explain to him what his responsibilities were and what all the CNDP monitors' responsibilities were. So if you want a copy of the CNDP policy letter, just let me know. Like I said, it's just basically the purpose, what the CNDP program is, different things that must be established, maintained, how you evaluate, and so forth, right? And how to implement. So just let me know if you want a copy of this. So check 3, CNDP or commanders will appoint CNDP coordinators on orders, right? So this is straight out of DAPM 750-1, paragraph 10-7E. Things I verify, like I said, appointment orders, commander signed the memo, currently in command, and has the orders, appointment orders been validated, right? So here you go, right out 10-7. Each commander provide interest and direction to establish an effective CNDP. The CNDP integrates existing resources in the command to avoid redundancy to ensure unity of effort, right? So keep that in mind. Commanders will appoint a CNDP coordinator on orders and ensure they understand their responsibilities and coordination requirements. All right, so CNDP coordinators will schedule formal and informal inspections and staff assistant visits. And this is just an example of appointment orders for CNDP coordinators. All right, so it's pretty self-explanatory. Checks 4 and 5. So 4 and 5, CNDP inspections are conducted annually for corps division, semi-annually for brigade and below, right? And that's the APAM 750-1, paragraph 10. And then keep the results of the last command maintenance inspection on file, right? Historical records. So we all know about historical records. So it's the APAM 750-1, paragraph 10-8 again. So things I look for are CNDPs being inspected. The units have signed CNDP past inspections. Does the unit have at least 2 years of past inspections? Okay, so one thing I notice on my level is it's easy for me to inspect at the battalion level, but it seems sometimes brigades do not do their proper intervals when it comes to inspections, right? So as the coordinator or you at the unit, it is your responsibility to say, hey, I'm due for a CNDP inspection. We should all want CNDP inspections to know where we stand and what we can improve on our maintenance, right? So just keep that in mind. So like I said, DAPM 750-1, the CMDP is a day-to-day program conducted by the commanders or the designated representatives, right? Frequency of interval inspection is set as desired. Commanders will conduct a formal inspection of brigade and lower size elements by the parent unit that has training, resources, and authority on a semi-annual basis, okay? Annual inspection for National Guard units or Ready Reserve units, so just keep that in mind. Battalion, brigade level staff, okay? So one thing I like to do, I encourage my units before they have a CNDP inspection, get with their local COMET team. They'll come down and do a courtesy inspection. What is nice about COMET is they'll go through the full inspection with you, tell you where you stand, what you need to fix, but they don't report to anyone. They don't do a roll up or an outbrief or anything like that. So just keep that in mind. COMET is your friend. Like I said, it just continues. It talks about school trained personnel working in maintenance positions, verified. Okay, we need to look at that. Check 6 are Army organizations activities performing maintenance operations, establish and maintain SOP, right? So a few regulations, 750-1, DAPAM 750-1, and then DAPAM 750-3. So things I look for in this is the SOP signed and current. And can the unit walk you through their SP or SOP? So one thing I do, I don't try to go to the motor sergeant or the shop foreman or the senior mechanic. I want to go to that mechanic. Can you tell me in your SOP how you perform operations or daily taskings, okay? To make sure that you're. So here you go, 750-1, paragraph 3-7, general policies, like we talked about, SOP will be established and maintained by all Army organizations and activities performing maintenance operations. All right. So keep that in mind. We must have a signed SOP and make sure, like, I can't tell you how many times I've inspected units that their SOP is like so out of date, like talking SAMs, no GCSS Army lingo or anything like that. LIW is gone, it's ASIP. Make sure all that stuff's updated. It's DAPM 7-1, 1-8, commander leader self for maintenance management competency. So these are just certain things here. You can look these up in the regulation. 750-3, need for standing operating procedure. All units performing maintenance are required to have a maintenance standing or SOP signed by the unit commander, okay? So the maintenance SOP may be annexed to the unit SOP and annexed to the unit's logistic SOP or a standalone document. The purpose of the SOP is to formally describe the way a unit performs maintenance on weapons, vehicles, communication equipment, chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear gear, all right, and other individual unit equipment. The unit's maintenance SOP will be written in enough detail to give recently assigned personnel a firm grasp on how maintenance is to be accomplished to the unit. So when we get a few videos down the road, I'm going to show you my 120-day low density training program. So I broke down all of my MOSs, what they train on, and what they train on weekly out of their 10, 20, 30 level manuals. Then also how the section trains. So each week my section trains on chapter 1 of the SOP, chapter 2 of the SOP, so that they get familiar with all that, right? And one thing I did notice when 3-Corps came down, it's a requirement on the CMDP on the 3-Corps side that your operators and maintainers, and especially your dispatchers, need to be trained annually on closing the dispatching loop. So we're going to get into that further down the road, but just keep that in mind. So check 7, the maintenance SOP clearly defines responsibilities and operations and procedures, right? So 750-1 and 750-3. So like I said, things that I look for are all areas covered in the SOP. I spot check random personnel to ensure they know their responsibilities and duties. I look at their SOP. I normally ask a unit to provide a copy through email ahead of the time before schedule, so I can sit down and go through each section and give them any pointers or things that don't make sense or things that should not be in there. And then at the end of the inspection, I'll turn that over to them and I'll say, hey, these are the recommendations on your SOP to make your maintenance program stronger, right? So here you go. Maintenance commander will ensure maintenance SOP provides clear guidance, right? So just keep that in mind. 750-1, 750-3. So believe it or not, everything listed here is required to be in your standard operating procedure, your SOP. All right. So there's a lot of topics you have to hit in your SOP, and this comes into play, especially if you're going for like the AMI. So the AMI, you have to submit your table of contents for your SOP. So just keep that in mind. Right? There's a lot of stuff, and here this is continued again. There's a lot of stuff that has to be in your maintenance SOP. So here is an example of an SOP I wrote a little while back on the duties and responsibilities, right? So if you guys want a copy of this annex from my SOP, just hit me up and I'll hook you up. So like I talk about, commanders, your executive officer, what their responsibilities are, your supply NCO, your first sergeant, your motor sergeant, your MCS, your supervisors, your first line leaders, vehicle occupants, maintenance personnel, equipment operators, right? So everybody in your unit has some type and some form of emphasis on maintenance. All right. So it's not just the mechanic's responsibility to maintain equipment from an operator, right? There are 10 level checks that operators should be doing. So keep that in mind. So check 8. So like I said, make maintenance SOP addresses all areas outlined. So you see there's a lot of areas, right? So things I check for are areas covered in the SOP. I look at the table of contents, right? So some of the common areas that I see that are not mentioned are corrosion prevention. I don't know why, but a lot of units do not mention corrosion prevention in their SOP. They have no idea what I'm talking about, right? AUAP. So a lot of units don't have equipment in AUAP and do not mention it, but it is required to be in the SOP. So make sure that's in there. Are correct terms being used, such as GCS is Army, not SAMS, ASIP, not LIW. We want to make sure all the lingo's in there, okay? And then another one is winterization. I can't tell you how many units I inspect that winterization is not in there, right? So every piece of equipment has some type of checks or some type of work package telling you how to winterize the equipment. All right. So for now, during this part of the inspection, I spot check the areas, right? The SOP we use for the full inspection. So we're going to keep going back and forth to it. All right. Like I said, look at the SOP, but ask them to provide you a copy of the SOP. And here you go. This is just telling you in 750-3 field maintenance standard operating procedures, right? Need for a standard operating procedure. And then, like I said, 750-3, these are the areas, once again, that are required to be in your SOP. So general policies, right? Just seeing officer equivalent, like I said, this is just a continuous. If you haven't noticed, 750-1, 750-3, 750-8, you're always working with those regulations, right? So check 9. LAS operators successfully complete the required training in order to operate assigned systems, right? So you're going to have local policies if you're not part of, 3 Corps, but Fort Hood's regulation 350-7, and then certs on file, right? So things I verified during this checks. Are they certified? Are personnel trained in GCS's Army? Are local policies being followed? So like here on Carson, like you may take the IRFs class in 2020, in 2022, you have to take it again, right? So it's things to keep in mind, especially the unit armor. Like when we talk about services, unit armor performs quarterly services on the M4. Well, if they're not armor trained or school trained, they do not perform those services. So you have to push those services to an SMC or so forth, right? So like I said, I verify IRFs, motor sergeants, etc. have the following certs and complete the training. G-Track, Wave 1, Wave 2. Local GCS's Army complete your 2875 SARR submitted to GCS's submitted for GCS's access. Appointment orders valid and on file to operate GCS's Army. So here's an example of 2875 on myself, right? So basically, you need one of these to operate the system. It's I guess it was last May that they found out that this was not being done. And this is, the reaffirmation. We're going to do a full series on how to actually reaffirm roles and stuff like that. But this is required to be on file. And then, of course, your training certs, right? So all your training certs. So in short training, G-Track training is complete, right? So all documents and GCS access uploaded into the system. So if you go into your personnel file in GRME or Access Admins, they have the approval. They can upload all these to your personnel file. So they're always there. The only thing you're going to have to update is your 2875 or any substitution 2875s that you may have, or when you go to your next unit, right? But I encourage you, right? So all the required documents, any documents, you can upload into GRME, especially with service packets. Like you can scan the whole service packet and you can attach it to that. You can upload it and attach it to that work order. Same thing applies to master driver. So we're struggling all the time creating these stupid packets over and over again. If we put them in the system, they're there, right? There's the system of records GRME. So if the records are there, then we are good to go. Like I said, if you're not trained, then you shouldn't be operating the system. And then, like I said, if they're not trained, do they have a valid reservation? Are they locked in? Like I know COVID played a crazy part when it came to schooling, and a lot of schools were canceled. I know in Carson, to try to get in some type of GCS's Army class was nearly impossible. They're starting to get back into the swing of things now, but just keep that in mind. So like I said, things I look for, you need appointment orders too. So if you are appointed, whatever position, you should have appointment orders on that, okay? And if you got multiple UICs, if you're at battalion level and you work with multiple UICs, like we have 6 UICs, your appointment order should have all 6 UICs on them. Check 10. Commanders will ensure contract maintenance is utilized properly when augmenting maintenance requirements. All right, so this is AR 750-1, paragraph 3-7, appendix C. So things I check for is maintenance being augmented, right? So if it's not augmented, I mean, this is simple. It's a no-brainer here. So augmented maintenance. So in appendix C, it pretty much breaks down actually how to do the formulas and calculate the amount of man hours needed and the amount of civilian personnel that may be required to service your equipment. Okay, so I know when one of my units left about a year and a half ago to deployment, we brought in augmentee maintenance. We had 17 mechanics, and we base it off of all of the vehicles they had, the amount of hours it took. So if you look at Appendix C, it'll break down for you how many man hours and how to multiply it and find the exact direct labor man hours you need, okay? So we're going to do another part of this when we get to our man hour series, but for now, this is just the Appendix C. So check 11, commanders will ensure contracting officer representatives are used to monitor. So if you have augmentee maintenance, you should have a contact or a COR. All right, so as appointment on file and as a current. So this is just an example of the appointment order memo for the contracting officer. Check 12, commanders will ensure maintenance managers are registered and have an ASIP access to perform maintenance functions, right? So things I check. Do they have an account? They may tell you have an account, but can they log in during the inspection? I can't tell you how many units I go to say, yo, yeah, I got an ASIP account. I can get on RCOP. I can get here. I can get there. I can pull up MWOs and yada, 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 right? They full of crap. If they can't log in during the inspection, they do not have access. And for me, when I ran a motor pool, I made sure there were multiple people in my unit that was able to have access to the system in case one person went on leave and then got locked out after 30 days later. We were always able to be in the system. And that also goes for your supply sergeants too, right? So I know I can't tell you how many times that the supply sergeant has come to a motor sergeant saying, hey, I need manuals, I need this. They should have their own ASIP account. So keep that in mind too. And most importantly, can they navigate the system? So here's a couple screenshots, on the new enterprise. Like we all know, it just changed. So make sure they know how to get to this, because I have inspected a few units in the past month or two that don't even know how to get to this part of the screen here, right? So make sure they know that LDAC is where most of our stuff is what we're going to go, right? Can they log in? Can they navigate or tell you, or can you say to them, hey, where do I go to find my TMDE stuff, right? So hopefully they know this and they can navigate this for you. So check 13, commanders will ensure all regulatory requirements are being met if the unit has equipment and administrative storage. So this is 750-1, paragraph 8-11. So things to check, is admin storage being used? Does the SOP cover admin storage? And being used are MFRs filed in the equipment folders, all right? So just keep that in mind. So here you is 750-1 administrative storage, right? So one key takeaway, people think you can just put something in administrative storage. That's not how it works, right? So if you look down here at G, it says before equipment is placed in administrative storage, it must meet the maintenance standard outlined in paragraph 3-2, right? So 1020 standards, so forth, it has to be serviced, all that stuff, right? So when more than 25% of the organization on-hand equipment must be placed in administrative storage, commander will consider initiating action to reorganize the activity at the level equipment authorized to operate and maintain. So if we cannot get augmentee maintenance, a lot of times, and what I do in my battalion is I take whatever rolling stock or generators, heaters, pumps, whatever they're leaving behind, and I look across my other units and I was like, okay, you have these vehicles, so you're gonna take care of these vehicles. You're going to take care of these vehicles, right? And a lot of that's easy because with the Army, you can do a Z loan and just Z loan it to them, all right? So just keep in mind, though, when you were talking about administrative storage, right? It says equipment will not be left in administrative storage for a period exceeding 365 days, right? So that's another big one. And then down here at K, if you look, equipment and administrative storage is accounted for, reports submitted under 710-3, material condition status reported under 220-1 and 700-38. So material removed for administrative storage. So once you put it in and you take it out, it must be restored to all normal operating procedures, have all MWOs applied, be returned to a normal PMCS schedule using the last type service completed. And this goes for calibration as well, all right? Check 14. Equipment enrolled in the low usage maintenance will meet criteria in accordance with 750-1, paragraph 4-2H. So low usage is kind of going away. We're doing all these non-comp stuff now, which I find it crazy. I'm not trying to get off topic, but I don't know how the Army is struggling with 60-day dispatches. Like my unit is driving me crazy. My battalion being overdue for 60-day dispatches, right? So We need to make sure that stuff's on the training schedule and there's a plan, all right, with your monthly rollouts and so forth. But we're going to get more to that when we talk about services. So a couple things I look for is low usage being used. Does equipment meet the criteria? And are there low equipment usage memos filed? So 750-1, paragraph 4-2H, right? So there's a bunch of stuff here in this that is pretty cool. Like, I find it really cool. So for example, right, it says non-power driven chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear CBRN equipment anticipated to accumulate fewer than 75 hours of operation in a 12-month period, right? That can go to low usage. 10-inch canvas items, small arms and crew served weapons, machine gun and mortars that are maintained in a high humidity controlled area are not removed for any reason, will be served annually, will be serviced, I'm sorry. So it's pretty cool. All equipment, there's a lot of stuff you can put into low usage. Generators, pumps, heaters, support equipment, all this stuff. It's all right here in 750-1, right? I'm not going to read it all because there's a lot here. So one thing I do want to read is down here in number 9 is units will conduct a 25% validation of equipment usage data in LIS versus equipment actual odometer quarterly. All right, so that is a check. You must conduct 25% validation of equipment usage. All right, and the best way to get after that is it on Monday. Just check it. I mean, it's pretty easy. Validation determines is that the usage data is 20% or more inaccurate. You must do 100%. All right, so keep that in mind. Lastly, check 15. Okay, all equipment will be exercised quarterly. Operators will perform a monthly PMCS per the TM and drive combat vehicles, tactical vehicles, and pool trailers significantly. Minimum of 5 miles to exercise SEALs and ensure mission capability. So this is right out of 750-1, paragraph 4-2. So things I verified during the check, okay? Records present, is it on the unit training calendar for the monthly rollouts, right? Does the GCS's Army have D1 notifications as proof? So I can't tell you how many units I go to. They have all these memorandums and yada, 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 right? But if you know how to get in the system, you can look up headquarters 4, go to the D1 notifications, and you can check for the monthly rollouts. It's pretty easy. All right, so keep that in mind. Don't be afraid to put them on the spot. Our job as CMDP inspectors is to ensure that they're getting the training they need and they understand, okay? And then does the unit close the dispatching loop, right? So spot check dispatches for now, right? So when we do our dispatch dipstick, we're gonna get a lot more into this. But one thing I have noticed is they are not closing out the dispatches, right? So they'll accept the dispatch back, won't have any miles on it, how much fuel consumption they use, and so forth, right? We need that stuff. Another big thing right now with the dispatches is, you know, the training tab and the level of activity, right? So that stuff is required. Oh. That is the first part of the general maintenance management operations checks 1 through 15. Like I said, this is going to be a pretty big series. And anytime, like I said, you want any of these materials, just reach out to me and I'll get them to you. So I'll see you in the next video where we go over check 16 through 30. And as always, go ordnance.